we are into video number 2 of our 10-part series talking about creating a demand for your DJ services with Dr. Drax. In this video, we're going to be talking, Drax mentioned in the first video about identifying the client that he wanted to work with. Drax, kind of go into a little bit more about knowing that preferred client that's going to be able to make it so you're going to be doing an excellent performance.
Well, a couple things you want to look at is, first, you want to think about honing down the types of events you like to do. Now, if you're keeping good metrics on your business, I've covered those in past Drax Bites episodes, what you want to do is you want to look at who your typical client is, who typically has given you the best reviews. You want to look at the client that typically has the right socioeconomic profile to be your client. What that means is you need to kind of know what their lifestyle is, where they live, who they associate with, the things they like to do, what their job is, the kind of car they might drive. These things all become metric identifiers to your client. And as you're keeping records on your clients going forward, you now start to build up a volume of who your atypical client is. An example would be a colleague here in Phoenix, Robert Walk. His company is Just Weddings. Means he's already eliminated every other kind of event. He just wants to do weddings. So he focuses on that wedding. When he does a bridal show, he knows exactly in his mind who his right client is. And it isn't just somebody that has the open date. It's somebody that he has been able to develop over his experience of they fit the mold of being my ideal preferred client. In my business, I had a specific client profile that I wrote down, and that really told me everything. I memorized everything about my business, what people would call an elevator speech, so that when I meet someone casually in an elevator or in some sort of non-selling business, and the conversation moves to what you do, you easily can move to your elevator speech because they've already kind of given you clues. They may be your client or they may know someone like your client. So have an idea in your mind who that is. Knowing who they are makes the selling process easier.
Much.
It stops being sales, as people think of, and it starts being a positive communication between two people with mutually shared objectives. They want a great event, and you want a great client that's easy to do with. I can honestly say in all my years, I rarely, if ever, had a Bridezilla. I rarely, if ever, had a Godzilla client. You all know what those are, right?
Oh yeah.
They come storming in, you know. And typically those clients come in at the last minute. Someone else actually hired, and then they come in. And so, you know, part of it is also figuring out who the buyer really is. And it may not be the person you're actually talking to today. You know, in the case of, you can tell a bride and groom and oh, they're all thrilled and happy, but dad's the buyer. And if dad's not in the room, all of your time with Sally and Ben is kind of wasted. Yes, you create some enthusiasm, but until you convince the buyer, it's kind of a moot point. That's why if you're in an event business like we are, you always want to make sure you stand before the buyer. The person that writes it.
You got it in a really good spot here. Let's look at that buyer for just a second, because for some people they're going to be like, okay, how does it matter, you know, knowing their demographics and things a little bit? Let's look at how it would be different between a father that was into, let's say, was more of a sports nut, was into NASCAR, was into wrestling, and that type of a father, compared to a father who was maybe into the outdoors, into nature, into being, you know, hiking in the mountains, and they take a trip that way. You would approach probably those two people completely differently.
Exactly.
And the
outdoor guy, we'd be talking about last man standing. And okay.
Yep, exactly.
But you know, we'd be talking about common things, and you know, if you're not an outdoorsman, don't fake it.
There's where I was after. Thank you.
If you haven't got time and grade, if you've never slept in a tent, on a cot, or on the ground, or done outdoors things, don't try to act like you're an outdoorsman.
Yeah.
On the contrary, if the father's a NASCAR guy, if you don't know some relevant facts about NASCAR and auto racing and the various players, don't fake it. If you find out that's what they are before, hey, go dig, bone up, learn a bit about it and be able to talk intelligently. And there's nothing wrong with admitting you don't know a lot about NASCAR.
Yeah.
Honesty and integrity will carry you farther. But what you want to find with that father is what his value buying point is.
And it could be completely different between those two fathers.
Exactly. And the commonality bridge with them is great. But ultimately, you really need to understand what is their buying lever? What is their buying button? Is it price? For most fathers on weddings and things, it's going to be price because they don't know anything else to shop on.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to have a dialogue prepared that speaks to them, to maybe what they do in their career, or if they're an outdoorsman, you can talk about the difference between a little chef or a camp chef stove and the old-fashioned white gas Coleman 2-burner stove, and how they both cook. One does it significantly better than the other. They both have a place, but if I'm bringing the whole family out to the woods and we're going to cook a mountain man breakfast, I need a camp chef. I need, I need 30,000 BTUs of heat and a big griddle. That's the way it rolls. Does that make sense, John?
Oh, it certainly does. Certainly does. And that's exactly where I wanted to go, is that you really have to understand that where they come from. And then as you say, we can't fake it. And sometimes we're just not going to be able to communicate or work well with people because of they're coming from a different perspective. They've got different things that are important to them than probably the things that we can deliver. And that's okay.
Exactly. And selling your service at a higher price relies on you being able to connect to things they place value in, where they see clearly understandable lines of demarcation of value. Often we use cars as a discussion. I've often used their job, because they'll say, well, but we've seen guys for this price. And I said, sure. And in your field, there are probably people willing to do your job for half price. Can they actually really do your job as well as you? What's their answer? Of course. Well, no. Bingo.
Yeah.
And then you simply buttress it with, it's not disparaging them, but everybody knows what they're worth, and everybody has that in their head, and clients reinforce it by hiring them at that price point. If they could charge more, they would charge more.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot to wrap this up here, talking about kind of identifying your optimal clients and understanding that not everyone is going to be your optimal client. This is video number 2 in our series here. We're doing a 10-part series on how to creating demand for your DJ services. For some of you, you're like, hey, you haven't even talked about much of that. Yeah, these are the steps to get you there. And we are up to number 2, going to number 3. In number 3, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the different services that you can offer that'll help you create demand. And we'll be back with that on the playlist in just one moment.